So my preferred way of growing determinate tomatoes, so those are the ones that grow up to a point and then produce everything, it's not like the vine-like ones, is using the Florida weave trellis-like setup here. It's simple, it's easy, a couple posts, maybe a couple more posts in the middle, and some string. So you can get a lot of bang for the buck, that you can get a lot of tomatoes growing in a concentrated space without having to have cages and all this other stuff. But one of the weaknesses of this method is sometimes things get a little too overgrown. So the maintenance isn't as much, because as you're going along and growing here, you strip off the bottom leaves to get a bare stem, and you just kind of weave around it, so you don't really have to deal with the leaves themselves. It's fairly straightforward, easy. It is a little bit time consuming, but like I said, you can get, there's 20-25 tomatoes in this line here, so in terms of what you're doing for the amount of maintenance that you're doing, it's minimal to the amount of plants that you have here. But the difficulty with Florida weaves is eventually, as you're pruning everything on the bottom, it's going to kind of look like a palm tree, where you have a long stem and then it's going to get heavier on top, and it has yet to even get very heavy yet, because we're still trying to produce more fruit. And what happens here is you have something like this. Now everybody's leaning, and that's simply because when I did this, I wasn't trying to be cheap, or I was just trying to be economical and trying to just deal with what I have, figure out, because we're not going to be growing tomatoes like this every year. This is variety year. We're just trying to figure out what we're doing, is make do with what we have and see what happens. So I put posts, 10-12 feet posts, 10-12 feet posts, some string. Those that grew really big got a little complimentary bamboo stick to help it along its way. But now we're getting into the bigger boys that are much more, not only top heavy, but because they have larger fruit, it's making the situation worse. So when you're doing Florida weaving such as this, you need to have stakes in between each plant. So I bought some furring strips. I cut a little arrow at the bottom, and I'll be putting them in later after, and I'll show you once I put them in, because this plus some string is misleading. It looks very strong, but it really isn't. It's mainly just there to make sure it doesn't fall over onto the ground. It will maintain it to a point, but it's string at the end of the day, and you don't have string on top. So what you need is some extra support in between the two, which is kind of the annoying part. So if you look at commercial tomato growers, they always have a main post, and then you'll see wooden sticks all throughout, and that's simply because they're trying to minimize the issue that you have here. So Florida weaves demand much more post than you anticipate. The string is there only as a supporting strength. It's not the primary support for this. So you'll see I'm going to put some tomato stakes into here to help lean this back up. So we ran out of wood, but we used what we could. So these now have the furring strip in it, so just a furring strip cut in half and then angled at the end to have a little firmer edge to go into the ground. So this row in particular, half of the pathway, the tomatoes were there, but now with the furring strips, with the string going along with it, you have a lot more rigidity to your Florida weave. So Florida weave is good. You just have to have additional support beyond your main support to get your tomato plants to stay up nicely. We are every other. Typically you want to be every per, just to maintain that, because you can still see that guy's a wobbling a bit. So we're going to need more. Like I said, we ran out of wood. So, but you do that over the whole line, and you'll have a nice firm edge associated with it.